Well, welcome. We're very, very excited that you have made this a priority in your professional learning today and that you're able to be with us. We completely understand as principals and vice principals how very busy our days are and how many pressures we have on our days, and to still be able to find the space and the presence to be with us. We are grateful to you for joining us. My name is Judith Desjardins. I am a principal with the London District Catholic School Board on secondment with School Mental Health Ontario. And when José joins, she will introduce herself as well. We are working together in partnership with ADFO, OPC, and CPCO to bring you this third year of a 3-year project around ASD. And so this is our first webinar this year, and we're thrilled that you're with us. Today's webinar is building a tree of transition support. So we're going to talk about successful transition planning. But before we do that, let's just take a moment, look around. If you have a window close by, let's appreciate where we're coming from today and acknowledge this wonderful space on Turtle Island in which we get to inhabit. So I come to you from St. Thomas, Ontario, which is just south of London by about 15 minutes and is pretty much right between London and Port Stanley, which is on the shores of Lake Erie. So these lands that I'm honored to live on are the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Attawandaron, Ojibwe, Chippewa Indigenous people. They walk these lands before me, and I'm incredibly honored to be present on these lands. These lands are covered by the Upper Canada Treaty. And knowing that they have been stewards of these lands long before I've had the privilege to be here, I am so grateful. I am grateful in the summertime when I am able to take out my paddleboard and paddle the shores of Lake Erie, which I know long time ago that served as a canal or a means of transportation to get around the shores where there's lots of vegetation and forests to discover. I too live on a ravine, and not much brings me much more joy than to be anchored by the nature in which I find myself. And yesterday I had my coffee and I was looking out the back window at the gentle snowfall, and I was able to see deer in the backyard. And I immediately remember that I am so fortunate to live on these lands that have been well cared for generations upon generations before me. And I am grateful to the Indigenous peoples for that land. So if you feel and you would like to do so, please let us know what lands you are finding yourself on Turtle Island, and add that to the chat so that we can all celebrate and acknowledge our responsibility when it comes to truth and reconciliation. Today's workshop is always anchored in the Ontario Leadership Framework. And in particular today, it's on building relationships and developing people. Also, to do that as principals and vice principals, we certainly draw on our professional leadership resources. In particular today, it's on our problem solving. So thank you for joining us today. At this time, I will turn it over to my colleague, José.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is José Landrio, and I am a principal with the Conseil Scolaire Viamonde. So welcome to everyone who is here today participating in this webinar. If you could change the slide. So if you could take a few moments and answer these polling questions, that would certainly help us out a lot to find out a little bit from where you're from and where you are working. If you could change the slide. I don't see any of the poll answers. I'm terribly sorry.
We're just waiting, José, for more people to complete it. We're at 78% right now, 82. So we'll just give it another second or so, and then Sarah will be able to close the voting and post the results.
Perfect.
Thanks, Nadine. We're just acknowledging Sarah as our technical support, and we couldn't do these presentations without her. So she's gathering all those results, and she will let us know who's been able to be with us today. Oh, here we go, Jose. So we see we have about, most are from elementary, but it's so wonderful to see our colleagues from secondary join us as well, and some people that carry both of those roles. Again, a nice even split, Jose, between principals and vice principals, and a few in other positions. So welcome, everybody.
Perfect. So today we're going to be talking about how transitions can be very difficult for students with autism and their families. If you could change the slide. So by building, terribly sorry. Terribly sorry, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty. So like a tree that needs the roots and a sturdy trunk for support, a good transition team plans together to create those roots and sturdy trunk for the school and the family and the students so that they can reach their full potential. A good plan ensures that everyone feels supported and accepted. The plan needs to support all aspects of the child and family, taking into account the family's history, culture, and values. The plan has to ensure that the child and the family feel safe and welcome. Like the tree, each child has a unique narrative and identity. It's so important that the school team looks beyond the OSR and see the child as a whole. To this end, we must work collaboratively with families for the success of the child. As principal, vice principal, it is so important that we get to know the families that we are working with in order to establish an environment that clearly shows that they are welcome and that we value their input and feedback. Change the slide, please. So the purpose of this webinar is to talk about the three major big T transitions for students with ASD. Transition from primary school, transition to secondary school, and transition to post-secondary. Transitions are always a challenge for students with autism and their families. They are frequently a source of intense stress. As principals and vice principals, we need to use our position of privilege and power in order to help to alleviate as best we can some of the stress by being actively involved in the process and by supporting staff, students, and families as they navigate these often very uncharted, uncertain waters. Parents look to the school in order to help them make the best decisions for their child's future. We need to be there for them in order to produce the best outcome for success of all. Throughout this webinar, please take a moment to reflect on the following question. How have you captured the parent-student voice in your transition planning? Change slide, please. Thinking about past transitions, we would like you to take part in another poll. Thinking about past transition meetings, think of the following. How have your transition meetings gone? What emotions do you see when parents are faced with these decisions? How can you support them? Today, we would like you to look at transition planning from the parent and student perspective.
So Jose, the poll is up for everyone to see, and don't forget to scroll down. There looks like there's 6 questions for you to give input on at this time. And again, we'll just take a moment. We know that Sarah's working behind the scenes to ensure that we're capturing everyone's voice as much as we can.
So we would like you to look at these 6 questions. So how would you classify your level of concern in regards to students with autism? Do you attend transition meetings? In your current school, is staff given time to program for success as a team? Are families involved in the planning? Are staff who are not directly involved with the ASD student encouraged to engage with the student throughout the day? And do you feel confident leading the transition team for students with ASD?
And Sarah, when you're ready, if most people have had the opportunity, we'll see the results.
So looking at the results, we see that it is a growing concern, an important concern. Do you attend all transition meetings? Most of you have answered to some degree and to a great degree. Oh, I'm just scrolling down. In your current school, is staff given time to program for success? So a lot of you have answered to some degree and some have answered to a great degree. Are families involved in the planning? Most of you have answered to some degree and some answered to a great degree. And are staff who are not directly involved with students with ASD encouraged to engage with the students throughout the day? Some say to some degree and some to a great degree. And number 6, do you feel confident leading the transition team for your students with ASD? And most of you answered to some degree and some to a great degree. Thank you very much for your answers to these questions. Sorry. I'm having a hard time transitioning from our slides. Here we go. If you could go to the next one, please. So thinking of, oh, sorry about that. So here are some regulations that might help you with some background information. So we have Regulation 181, which requires a transition plan to be developed as part of the IEP for exceptional students who are 14 years of age or older. PPM 140, which requires school boards to plan for transitions for students with ASD. Staff must plan for the transition between various activities involving students with ASD, and PPM 156, which requires school boards to develop a transition plan for all students who have an IEP, whether or not they have been identified as exceptional by an IPRC, and including those identified as exceptional solely on the basis of giftedness. Change the slide, please. So here's what we know. And some items to keep into consideration when transition planning for students and families. The student profile, student emotional well-being, student environment, student voice, parents' hopes and dreams. Transition planning should begin well in advance of the expected transition. Big T transitions, which are significant changes, and little t transitions, which are the regular day-to-day activities. Change the slide. So we're going to talk about the big T transitions. So these require a lot of planning and teamwork. The biggest ones are entry to school and exit from school. Most schools do very well with the transition planning into school rather than coming out of school. We gather family and community partners, we visit daycares, we invite the children and their families to visit the classroom before school begins. And this planning and collaboration continues for the transition to high school. The elementary panel, who know the student best, work with the receiving secondary school staff in order to prepare for that transition. The secondary school often invites the student to the school and their family in order to participate in the planning. However, the research has shown that schools need to do better at the transition planning and supporting families as their young adult transitions from secondary school into the post-secondary world. Next slide. Here are some facts, some factors that we need to consider as we approach these big T transition with families. One, they carry a lot of fear and worry and emotions for parents. It is so important for schools to be aware of the unique challenges confronting families of children with autism. They live intense daily lives that are marked by ongoing chronic stress from a variety of sources, such as unpredictable behaviors, financial strain, mental health, and this is only to name a few. Schools can offer support to parents and by including them in the transition process and build long-lasting, strong relationships. It is so important that parents feel welcome and be welcomed and not to dismiss their feelings. Parents often feel the need to be heard and be an active part of the process. As this was discussed in our year 1 webinar, if you would like more information, we do invite you to go back and visit webinar 3 from year 1, and those links would be on your found on your association website. Change slides, please. Little T transitions, which are change of activity, change of subject, routine, the day-to-day workings in a school. So these are easily remedied, and generally schools do a great job at providing that there is good transition and teamwork with families. Change the slide, please. So what is the principal's role in transition planning? To be a key part of the transition plan, be present. Parents are nervous, anxious, scared, as they want the best for their child. Parent conversations can be difficult and emotional, and it is so important to be mindful and respectful. It is always important to keep in mind that with these big T transitions, there is always a period of mourning for parents, and sincere empathy is key. Principals need to take the time to get to know the student and the parents and listen to them talk about their hopes and dreams. Principals should also listen about the lived experiences of the students and their families. Remember that you have to meet the families where they are and to work with them from there. This process takes time, and quite a few meetings may be required in order to build enough trust in order to lead a strong relationship. As a principal, ensure that you are fulfilling their needs while also being an advocate for them. Parents can be overwhelmed and have no idea where to begin. Often principals are looked upon as having all the answers. However, it is okay to not have all the answers, but to be prepared to roll up your sleeves and get to work with parents in order to make that durable bond. It is okay to say, although I empathize with you, I cannot begin to understand what you are feeling at this moment, but together we will find the solutions. And now my colleague Stéphane will speak to you a little bit about transition planning.
What's really important when we address transition planning, we've talked about the need for transdisciplinary team approach. As you can see in the slides, the student and his family are at the center, and then all the other providers, being the different professional, either in the community or at school, are all working within one treatment plan, and that's the one to create a better transition for all the autistic students. I think what we need to start with to keep in mind is the fact that for a student to be able to accept transition, being cognitively or physically or even transitioning into high school or adulthood, is what are the competencies that we need to be focusing on. And I think the first element that we all should be looking at when we work with the students that's going through these processes is ability to engage. So there's three forms of engagement that really guides us into the ability of a students to be able to transition smoothly. The behavioral engagement, so did the student learn how to be a student? Does he have the prerequisite? Is he able to be independent? That's the key element when we talk about behavioral engagement. Emotional engagement is the ability for a student, especially in autism, when we talk about emotional regulation, it's that student, he or she, are they capable to modulate their emotional reaction when they're faced with changes, when they're faced with having to switch from one activity to the other. So that means the ability to engage, disengage without any emotional outburst. Are they able to socialize within an inclusive environment? And how do they react when there is changes within the classroom, within the course content, and also from one grade to the other? And I think that if we don't work on behavioral engagement and emotional engagement, it's really hard to get into what we call cognitive engagement, and that's such a key component. We've talked about executive functioning in previous webinar, where can the students organize their own material? Can they organize their thoughts? Are they able to plan ahead? So are they able to plan a transition? Are they able to plan, before doing a task or having to switch from one task to the other? So these are key elements that we need to be looking at when we're working with the transition component of it. What's also really important, specifically for autism, is what is the role of everyone that are part of the transition plan. So the family is the key component. So they need to be aware of whatever is being, put in place within the school environment, whatever the strategies are, used in the classroom. They should be shared with the family. If we're going to be aiming at generalization, because generalization will help students, transition better because they're capable of using some of the key strategies, some of the competency in different environment. So it doesn't matter if they have to transition from one environment to the other or from one task to the other. If they know how to plan, if they know how to anticipate that there's going to be a change, then they're not going to be anxious. They're not going to have any emotional outburst about it. So that means that the family needs to be able to have access to all the strategies we've been using. What are all the objectives we've been working on? So to facilitate generalization, but also for the school system to be able to get to the point of what we call maintenance and habituation. That means where the student is not, anxious because he needs to switch from one task to the other, or he needs to work with another adult, or he needs to be with a different EA because that EA is not in school. If we don't, focus on these competency, that's why we're seeing major issues with the transition. Also, depending on the type of transition, there is, what we call local transition, meaning that the student is in the classroom and there's multiple transition throughout the day. That needs to be done in anticipation. So that means any EA that works with a autistic child or adolescent, they need to be able to teach these students how to anticipate change. That's why they're resistant to change, is because most of the time it's the adult that does the self-regulation for them, that does the thinking for them, that organizes their stuff and organizes their ideas. So any students that's not able to do that will have major meltdown when it's time to transition. There's also what we call transition from one environment to the other. So you need to be able to help these students learn specific skills that's going to give them the appropriate tool to be able to switch from one environment to the other and use some of the strategies that were taught to them. Having said that, the best way to do that, to prepare any form of transition, is to at least give them 3 to 4 opportunities daily where they can practice a specific strategies, practice any form of transition in order to be able to have success. And really, so the best strategy would be gradual exposure to these students in these different environments, and then focused on the reaction, what we need to focus on, where did the student have any issues, and then make sure that we plan ahead, anticipate, and really focused on some of the skills that that student needs to be working on. When it comes to community professional, it's really important to look at who's involved, what the student does outside of the school. Is he isolated? Is he part of different, activities where it promotes socialization? It promotes any emotional regulation opportunities? And is it also stimulating cognitively, or are they always at home with only the parents or the siblings, and that student has no opportunity to see the outside world? And I fully understand, because a lot of families often are afraid of the meltdowns in the community or any outside. But if we don't expose them to the outside, that means that we're reinforcing the anxiety reaction and the inability for that students to transition in different environment and be part of the community. So I think, it's really the best way to facilitate the transition. It's not to wait until it's time to transition, but it's really to anticipate beforehand. So for me, the best way, and what I've been doing with a lot of school boards, around the world and in Canada, is to plan Canada is to plan a transition. Let's say it's from one grade to the other, starting in April. We often will do a transition plan and put it in place right at that moment. So we'll send the student into the upper grade to spend the day and do observation and see what that student needs to work on, what he's capable of doing, and what are some of the uh, pedagogical, adaptation that that teacher would have to be doing, especially if they receive, because it also provides us with the opportunity to see how that student responds to a different teacher with a different personality and different style. It also promotes, social emotional skills, because it creates a relationship with the students and that future teacher. If they're going to the high school level, I would probably, even put it to 2 to 3 days where they go and spend and follow the different courses that they will have to do, and see how they respond to, engaging, disengaging, and also transitioning from, a geography course to a math course to a French course, and see how that students cope. What are the coping mechanisms, to see if we don't see it from our own eyes, we can plan all day in theory. What we have to do, transition for me is a practical element that needs to be anticipated, that needs to be planned with the students, and also the student needs to be exposed directly to that, because then we can guide and help the family with that transition. We can also support outside help, community professional, and the school personnel will have a chance to get to know the profile of that student. So all of this has to be planned ahead, because and the bottom line is a transition is an ability of an autistic students to adapt, engage, and modulate their behaviors and their emotional reaction to any form of change. Having said that, we need to start, making changes every day, exposing the child to multiple adults, and also promoting self-regulation skills to these students, and doing what we need to do in order for them to adapt and really be able to cope with any form of changes, rather than always have the same routine, always have the same visual component. We need to be able to bring that child to be able to resist to his tendency to perseverate on as and wanted everything to be the same, and really focus. And families need to understand that, because often they think they're doing the best by having everything the same, having the same routine, but that really brings that student to be so resistant to any form of changes, and that's why we're having issues with transitioning planning overall.
Thank you, Stefan. Change the slide, please, to the don't let anyone who hasn't been in your shoes tell you how to tie your laces. I particularly like this quote, as this quote sends a strong message from the parent perspective regarding saying that transitions are very complex. And it is known that individuals with autism can have a lot of difficulty with transitions, and this can cause a lot of confusion and anxiety, not only for the student, but also for the parent. Listening to parents talk about their day-to-day experience with their children, and incorporating these suggestions in school practice is essential. So the following is a scenario which could unfold between a parent and a senior team member. In regards to your recent email, I'm calling you today. How can I help you?
Oh my goodness, thank you for calling me back. As you can see from my email, I'm extremely frustrated with the lack of transition planning for my child who's graduating. I've been communicating with the school for a few months now and have little to no information as to what's going to happen after he graduates.
I truly understand what you are going through, as I have quite a lot of experience in special education.
I'm sorry. How can you understand what I am going through unless you've experienced the anxiety of not knowing what program or where my child is going after graduation, because there are no options that have been made available to me, and no one from the school or the agency where he may be going has contacted me? You can't know how I'm feeling right now. Please, with all due respect, if you have not been in my shoes, do not tell me how to tie my laces.
You are absolutely right. I'm so sorry to have jumped to assumptions. I have not been in your shoes, and I would truly like to apologize. And now, can we please have a conversation and let me try to understand from your point of view and see what I can do to help you?
In this entire process, you are the first person to call me and have a conversation with me. I truly think that the school should have called and that we should have been working together already. Thanks for calling.
So keep in mind and remember when having these conversations and when going through this process, that one, it is okay to apologize if there's a mistake made, but two, always be ready to listen. This parent had sent so many communications after the school, and no one had the courage to call and ask how they can help, how the school can help. Emails are always a great tool for communication. However, a phone call can go a long way. Studies and research have shown that parents want to be involved and that they want good communication. It's okay to not have all the answers, and it's okay to say to a parent, I'm listening, let's work together and see what solutions we can find. As a school, we want the best for your child too. Please remember to be sincere in your actions. Next slide. So remembering that we need to work together in partnership with parents, and always remember that this guide is a fantastic resource. It is important to keep in mind that many parents are on their own journey of acceptance of the diagnosis, and it has significant implications for both their own lives and the lives of their child with autism. Having a child with autism is a big challenge for any family, and this may have emotional and physical and financial impacts on the family. The impacts can be very considerable across situations, and some families are able to cope with these additional stressors. However, for others, it can be very difficult. Remember to not make assumptions that what we are seeing from parents. We don't know where the parent is at. Understand behavior, don't judge. Understanding what the parent is saying through their anger. Remember that fairness is not sameness. You need to demystify this and to do what is best for the student to be successful. Change slide, please. As you look at this iceberg, think back to a time when you were angry or upset. I'm quite certain that the reasons for your anger lie underneath the water. It is so important to remember that parents are presenting their best selves at any given moment. It's important to take time to find out where that anger is coming from and work with them from where they are. Parent conversations can be very difficult and emotional, and it is important to be mindful and respectful. Our role as school leaders is to see beyond the anger or presenting emotion and to look deeper in order to understand that parent's perspective. As principals and vice principals, we must help our staff also to see beyond that emotion. It is our responsibility to seek a relationship with parents and work together in this partnership. This happens when we take time to get to know the families. Communication is key. If a meeting needs to be rescheduled in order to take time to talk and listen, please do so. In order to move forward, you have to understand what families have been going through and where they want to go. Seeing beyond the presenting emotion requires principal, vice principal to use their personal leadership resources as they are outlined in the Ontario Leadership Framework. Change slides. Remember that the success of a transition team relies on the circle of trust that the school creates with parents and guardians. Remember, this is a team approach. Transition planning cannot be done alone. The circle is made up of school staff, parents, guardians, outside agencies, the community, professionals, and you, the principal. As the leader, you set the tone. You create that safe environment for courageous conversations to happen. Trust leads to successful inclusion, which in turn leads to long-standing relationships. By including community and family members and giving them equal powers to contribute to the development of the educational goals, you are promoting an inclusive and sustainable and culturally responsive practices for your student success. Know who is in your circle. Know that you are not alone. It is important that you also know who in your board you can reach out to if you have any questions. Change slide. Successful transition plans require planning. And remember to listen and communicate with parents with care and attention, since parents have a unique understanding of their child's ability to handle transitions. Communication is the vital link for success. Be consistent in the use of transition strategies, as this builds the trust of the student and helps alleviate anxiety. Allow time for transition. Document the transition and identify successes and misses. Recognize that parents of the child with autism are constantly dealing with transition issues and assist them in developing plans that encourage home and school consistency. Change slides. Keep the following in mind when you are planning for transitions. Involve the student, be student-centered, promote independence, reflect inclusive practices, involve outside agencies, collaborate, create a shared vision, set goals, start early, and create a comprehensive structured plan for the future with a timeline. Change slides. As leaders, we need to know how to pull that transition team together. We need to identify the supports that students and families need in order to create that positive change. Every decision made has a direct impact on student learning and outcomes. And the key to good planning lie in the 3 C's: communication, collaboration, and community. You must consider all the solutions and certainly be open to new ideas. Next slide. We must keep in mind that we have to work together. And keep in mind that the Euro-American values of independence and self-sufficiency are not values that are shared by all family members of all cultures. Some cultures, for example, Asian and First Nation cultures, are more collectivist in nature. Often in these cultures, children are primarily viewed as parts of the family and community, and a certain degree of dependence on family throughout the life is expected and valued. Thus, the typical goal of increased independence may not be seen as important to these families. A family's unique historical and cultural background influence factors such as the following: a family's willingness to seek help, the family's communication style, the amount and type of participation that family members choose, the goals the family selects, which family members will be involved in the school intervention efforts. The special education team, teachers, and school staff can be more effective in working with all families across cultures by recognizing their own cultural identities and values and considering how these may be shaping their present professional beliefs. Next slide. So in conclusion, I invite you to take a moment to reflect on the following. In Cree, the word used to describe autism is pitote-yitam, which means he, she thinks differently. Today, I am hoping that you've seen the pivotal role that you play as the principal, vice principal in the lives of students and families. If we can begin to think differently about transitions, we can begin to make a very big difference. Effective transition planning teams can help alleviate the complexities related to student success by creating a powerful web of proficiency through parents, teachers, and community experts working together. Be mindful of holy days, days of significance, and holidays when scheduling meetings and/or assessments for diverse students with autism and their families. School and community leaders must be accountable and build professional cultures in order to ensure that every child succeeds. Next slide. This quote rings so true with so many parents. With a successful school transition team, it could read, autism doesn't come with a manual. It comes with a parent and a school team that never gives up. Whether you are an elementary, middle, or secondary school leader, keep this in mind as you start to plan transitions for the years to come. This leads us into inviting you back to webinar 2 on February 15th in English and February 16th in French. Webinar 2 is entitled Understanding Conflict as a Catalyst for Change. Through a panel discussion with a parent, principal, and other team members, we will explore strategies used to prevent and resolve conflicts when supporting a student with autism to develop their full potential and succeed in school. We'll discover how our panel participants have turned conflict into positive outcomes. Next slide.
Thanks, Jose. I do hope that people are able to come in February and see webinar number 2. At this time, I know that Sarah is going to put into the chat. Oh, there's a quick poll coming straight up for you to do. So there are, again, scrolling down, there are 5 questions. If you would kindly take time to give us your feedback. This is very helpful to us as we continue to plan forward this year. Again, Sarah working behind the scene will let us know when we've had a majority of people respond. And then Jose, I invite you to provide comment as well. And to acknowledge as well that we work as team, just as you do within the school. So Janine hasn't said anything yet today, but she is certainly part of this trio putting work together, and we are very well supported by OPC, ADFO, and CPCO in this work.
I don't see the answers yet, so I'm just going to wait until they pop up.
We have 58% who's responded. So I think, Sarah, we can go ahead and just, 62%, good. All right, you should see the results now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So how has this webinar contributed to your understanding of transition planning? A reaffirmation of knowledge, 44%, and a bit of both, 44%. That's great. How has this webinar contributed to your understanding of the importance of engaging families? Again, we're kind of a split between reaffirmation and a bit of both with a little bit of new learning. So that's great too. Was the length of the webinar appropriate? Yes, that's perfect. Good for us to know. And did you find this webinar of value? I am so glad to see that 94% of you said yes. And some of you said no, but that's okay. We appreciate all the feedback. And do you plan on participating in the next 2 webinars? And I'm 94% saying yes, so that is fantastic. Well, on behalf of Judith, Janine, and myself, as well as Stefan, who contributed the recording, I would like to thank all of you for being with us today, and we really, truly appreciate you taking the time out of this incredibly busy school year, and I wish you all a great evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Jose. I echo that as well. Please know that there is the registration links have just been put into the chat. If you haven't registered for the next webinars, we encourage you to do so. And for registering, we will also send out the recording of this webinar, so you have it as reference. Expect it within the next couple of weeks, so probably just before Christmas if you're lucky. So thank you for being with us. Have a terrific day. Thanks for creating space for some of this time together. Take care.